Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, it's a major milestone for Let's Encrypt. F-Secure publishes their investigation into the Dukes, and we dig into the TarSnap email confirmation bypass. And it's a great big batch of your questions, a rockin' roundup, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 233 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on September 17th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Our live stream, why, that's powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. You should go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hello, sir. That's a nice red shirt you have on today. I like that.
Yes.
Was that from a battle?
No, this is an old one from college, actually. In our Cisco class, we had 2 racks of routers, and so the class basically got split into 2 teams, which, because of the popularity of red versus blue at the time, we're red team,
red
and
blue team. Yeah, sure.
and I was the leader of red team.
Oh.
And then Kenny was Lopez the mechanic, and my friend Tom was Griff, and Luke was Donut, and so on. And then we named the other team Church, and
nice,
and so on, and all the characters were represented.
Well, even though both Alan and I are a little battle worried today because we're fighting a cold, but that doesn't stop the news. So the TechSNAP program continues on, and this first story is one that our audience has been following for a while, the whole Let's Encrypt initiative, and there's actually got a pretty big milestone, doesn't it, Alan? What's going on?
Yeah, so they're about starting to issue their first certificates, although they don't actually work yet, but
okay,
it's a big step.
Yeah.
So Let's Encrypt is a movement to issue free and automatically generated HTTPS certificates, and the big goal there is to get everybody over to using HTTPS. So no more, I'm not going to do HTTPS because I don't want to pay for a certificate because we'll give you one for free.
Or whatever.
Yeah, it's like we'll just give you one for free with none of the paperwork or nonsense. Although they have systems in place to make sure that you actually control the domain you're getting the certificate for and so on, and a couple other requirements. But the idea is that everybody will have SSL certificates and an easy way to get them and renew them, and every little thing, even if it's only temporary, can be just get an SSL certificate.
Yeah, I mean, and ideally, then people have more faith that the servers they're communicating with are genuinely there.
Most importantly, we can get rid of all self-signed certificates, and that way,
no more
when you
scary
see the warning,
errors.
you know that basically make the scary errors more meaningful by making them happen less often.
Yeah, right. That's a great point.
A coalition of technology companies, including Mozilla, Cisco, Akamai, Automatic, IdenTrust, and the EFF and the University of Michigan came together to get Let's Encrypt off the ground. And the initiative is open source and overseen by a California nonprofit called the Internet Security Research Group. So Let's Encrypt has done all the setup and paperwork and been through all the audits and so on to actually become a trusted certificate authority.
Okay.
But obviously the big difference is that they will be giving them away for free. Now, there's been another site they give them away for free, but they wasn't trusted by all browsers before, and they had this interesting side effect of if you make them do a lot of extra work, they want money for that. So revoking certificates cost money.
Right, you mentioned that, and so it's
almost nobody did that usually, especially with a free one, until Heartbleed, and then there was a whole bunch of people that needed to revoke a whole bunch of
And it kind of became an emergency, and so you kind of had to pay at the worst time possible, and it's probably not something people even necessarily budgeted for and things like that.
Right, but at the same time, the people running it, it's understandable that they needed $10 to handle all the extra work of revoking your certificate.
Yeah, absolutely, Yep.
But anyway. So they say eventually webmasters will merely run a client to authenticate that they own the server. They'll also be able to enable features like HTTP Strict Transport Security, or HSTS, which basically will say, hey, you visited this site. I say we have SSL, so if you ever see the site without SSL, somebody's trying to trick you. Right? So something websites can do to say, hey, we'll always have SSL, and if you ever get to our site and it's trying to not do SSL, it's because somebody's doing something hinky to you. It'll also have the OCSP stapling so that you can make sure you can verify the certificate and it hasn't been revoked and so on. and they're asking people to make sure that visitors to the old HTTP version of your site are redirected to the new one. So for this to be trusted by legacy software, obviously, even if the Let's Encrypt certificate authority gets added to the thing in all your browsers, it's not going to work on older things that don't have this in their certificate store.
Right.
So they're going to get a cross signature from an existing CA that will basically allow them to. IdenTrust is already in the certificate store that everybody has.
Okay.
And so this will allow the Let's Encrypt certificates to be trusted even by older devices that don't have Let's Encrypt in their trust store.
And so that really does make this a pretty much complete, ready to go, well-supported solution.
Yeah. Although I'm sure people will come up with a couple of ways to get certificates that they shouldn't. And, obviously I see, spammers getting certificates from this and they're going to have to come up with policies for that. And I think they have a lot of that in place, but
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what happens in the first couple of months of this being live. But currently, the cross signature from the trusted CA is not in place yet. So certificates issued by Let's Encrypt are only trusted by people who have manually installed the Let's Encrypt certificate authority into their store.
Okay.
Although I'm assuming it will ship in Firefox and other browsers fairly quickly.
Yeah, and one of the other things that's really fascinating to me about this project is, they have this here, and if you look in the show notes, we have a link to the Threat Post article talking about this. And in that Threat Post article, they have a screenshot here, and this screenshot is it's a deb file that you install or a shell script that you download, and that shell script with an ncurses interface walks you through, without ever having to leave the console, walks you through getting a cert, setting it up in Apache, and switching over your traffic to either HTTPS and HTTP or just HTTPS, all by executing essentially a command and then answering some questions. So it's not just a matter of making the SSL cert free, but it's also the fact that they're going to make it dead crazy simple to set up. Like you don't have to be really an Apache administrator or really even go to the website to get a cert anymore. You just run this Python script or whatever it is on the machine, and it's going to even be in the repos for some of these distros.
Right. I know that was part of the goal of setting this up was that if you're just a web developer building an application, you maybe not are an expert on configuring your web server and so on. So they wanted to make it super easy so that everybody can do this and have these.
Lower the barrier to entry, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure I want some random program reconfigure my web server, but it seems to have the option to not require me to use it that way.
Yeah. For you, Alan, there's other solutions too, right? I mean, you already have an existing way of getting your SSL certs where you've already done all that, so probably wouldn't change anything for you. I wouldn't imagine, right?
Well, I'd still like to have free certificates.
Sure. All right, let me tell you about another thing that lowers the barrier to entry. That's Ting, our first sponsor here on the TechSNAP program. Go to techsnap.ting.com. Techsnap.ting.com will give you a $50 discount off a first Ting device, or if you already have a Ting-compatible device, and they have a wide CDMA and GSM network, so you might, then they're going to give you $50 as service credit. So what is Ting and why? Ting is an MVNO that makes mobile a lot more approachable. They only charge for what you use, and it's a $6 flat rate a month, then your usage on top of that. So it's $6 for a phone line, and then the usage, minutes, messages, megabytes. Really straightforward. That's it, plus any taxes that your state might apply. You can check them out by going to techsnap.ting.com. They have no contracts, no early termination fees, and they even have an early termination relief program if you're stuck in a duopoly contract. Even they're trying to bail out of it in some clunky way, those duopolies, aren't they? But there's nothing quite like Ting. And also, while you're at Ting, check out their blog post. They have a blog post up about the iPhone 6S and 6S Plus. Put it the short way, yes, it'll work on the Ting network, but if you want to read more about it, go over to Ting's blog. And also something I've been playing with starting yesterday is the Netgear Zing. It's a MiFi device, and it runs on the Ting network, and you can get it if you go to techsnap.ting.com for a discount, and then you're just paying for what you use data, $6 a month for the line. You can turn it on and off. The thing I like about this one is all the setup is done on the screen. You don't have to go into a web browser. You don't have to go to the 192.168.1.1 and enter in their crappy password. It's all done through the UI on the touchscreen, and you right up from the beginning set up your Wi-Fi network name and password, and then you can see what its activated status is. You can see what its wireless signal is, how many devices are connected, and how much data you've used during that session, all right there on the screen. And it seems to have a better battery life than I was expecting as well. So I just picked that up for the road trip. the Netgear Zing. Go to techsnap.ting.com. Go get wireless service that really rocks. They got a lot of good devices, or you can bring your own, and you can support the show. They have a savings calculator I'd like you to try, too. Try them out. They also have no-hold customer service between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. East Coast time if you ever get stuck. Try them out. 1-855-TING-FTW. And then go to techsnap.ting.com to make your purchase. And a big thanks to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Let's talk about the Dukes. Not the Dukes of Hazzard, the Dukes of Russian cyber espionage, I guess, is what they are.
Yeah.
This is a pretty interesting story that goes back years and years, and it turns out multiple researchers have been chasing these guys, Alan.
Yeah, so F-Secure has just published their investigation into this group, which is a Russian APT team. And they say, we believe that the Dukes are a well-resourced, highly dedicated, and organized cyber espionage group that has been working for the Russian government since at least 2008 to collect intelligence in support of foreign and security policy-making decisions. So, they have some malware that's very good at stealing documents, and they've been using it against... And their targets always seem to shift to where the Russians want the information. Now, this doesn't mean that they're necessarily working for the Russians, just that they're selling their haul to the Russians.
Right? Yeah, they know what their customer wants, maybe? Maybe they're taking orders, or maybe they...
maybe they're taking orders, or maybe they just know what their customer wants and go and get it and sell it for money. So the same group is actually being tracked by FireEye, but FireEye just calls them APT-29 because they've just assigned each team a number instead of giving them a cool name. The name actually originally came from Kaspersky, who found the Dukes the first time.
Which is also a Russian-based company, right?
Yes. Now, their name, Duke for the malware, actually came from the fact that it reminded them a little bit of Dooku, but F-Secure said there's no actual connection to Dooku. It's just similar concept.
Okay.
And so that's Dooku just became Duke. Right?
Yeah.
There's a whole, if you read the PDF from F-Secure, they have a whole page just on where the name came from.
It's a monster PDF too.
Yes. Very graphical. Regular research papers are, academic style. And then we kind of usually get this hybrid.
Yes. This is one of the most graphical I think we've really had.
That one's a little more markety than, I like the Kaspersky ones that, they have some graphics and stuff, but they're not quite so flashy.
Yeah.
But, if you're trying to convince management, then their approach, obviously the F-Secure approach fits better depending on who's meant to read it.
Also, if you want to position yourself as the next FireEye, FireEye 2.0.
Yeah. But interesting, what F-Secure ended up doing was combining their research that they've been doing recently with that of the researchers like Kaspersky, FireEye, and ICDS, and going back through the F-Secure's own historical research and their old samples of the malware, and now knowing all the things they know now, looking at that malware from 2008, they understand a lot more about it than they did when they looked at it in 2008. So, it proves that there's actually value in keeping old malware around. Because as you learn more things, it helps you unlock put those little bits of information together.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
But that they basically found evidence that this group's been going for at least 7 years. And by connecting the dots, they actually managed to find 2 older pieces of malware that they can connect to the same group, whereas before they didn't know it was related. And, that gives them more information to help understand what's actually going on here and what the objectives of that malware were.
Right.
So the Duke group has been quite an array of different malware that they've built. Plus, they, iterate and modify each bit of malware as it gets detected to try to stay undetected. But they had Mini Duke, Cosmic Duke, Onion Duke, Cozy Duke, Sea Duke, Cloud Duke, Mini Dions, and Hammer Duke, which FireEye calls Hammer Toss. Some of the interesting things, though, are that the Dukes rapidly react to research being published about their tool sets and operations. However, the group or their sponsors value the operations so highly that they will attempt to modify their tools to evade detection and regain stealth. They will not cease operations to do so. They'll just keep going and steadily incrementing their tools until they're not detected.
Wow.
Rather than, a group that was worried about getting caught would stop, develop new tools once they're sure those wouldn't be detected, then start again.
Does that suggest a tight timeline to you?
It suggests 2 different things. A, that yes, they, the information that they're gaining they really want, and that they're not that worried about getting caught. Which, we can draw some conclusions about that in a minute. These campaigns utilize a smash and grab approach, involved, fast but noisy break-in, followed by the rapid collection and exfiltration of data as quickly as possible, rather than, the APT style, get in there quietly and slowly suck
live
out
in there
the
as long as possible.
Yeah. If the compromised target is discovered to be of any value, the Dukes will quickly switch tool sets used and move to their stealthier tactics focused on, persistent compromise and long-term intelligence gathering. So they just, go barge in and then figure out if they need to be stealthy, so as not to waste their stealthy tools on targets that don't have anything of value in them.
Seems like they run the risk, though, of, alerting someone to their presence if they decide they want to stay.
Right. But if they're being loud and noisy and that alerts you and you lock that down, you don't necessarily keep looking for the quiet approach, right?
Right, because you think you found it.
Yeah, because we stopped the noisy guy, so...
Yeah, here they are. We found it. Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
In some of the most extreme cases, the Dukes have been known to engage in campaigns with unaltered versions of their tools only days after they've been brought to the public's attention by security companies and, actively mentioned in the media. In doing so, the Dukes show unusual confidence in their ability to continue to successfully compromise their targets, even when their tools are publicly exposed.
Or they know that people take forever to patch.
That's it. But this suggests that they don't fear getting caught. And that may be because, like that group we talked about, that big botnet a couple weeks ago from the Krebs article, that they have been promised protection by the Russian government. So, even if the Americans figure out who you are, we're not going to extradite you, and so you'll be safe.
We're not going to let them get you.
Yeah, plus, so whether or not they're actually under the orders of the Russian government or just getting this information and selling it to the government.
There is also, though, there is another advantage to using a publicly known tool, and that is it's much harder to track it back to a specific group, because if a group gets known for using, Pinch Duke and Cosmic Duke and Mini Duke, then they kind of, that's their trademark. Whereas if it's just some generic malware that the rest of the industry knows about, you can't really say for sure if it was the Dukes that used it or not, right? So it's almost a way to be a little more anonymous. If you track it back to them, you're like, wow, it's so brazen they were using this publicly known tool, but at the same time, they might be why they're using it.
I think the reason that we're using the tool even after it came out is because they still needed the information, and as long as it still works.
That's implied in the report. I agree. Right. I'm just saying possibly maybe they used it because it was known.
What would be really interesting is if, once a tool started to get known, maybe even before there was a patch or, a detection for it, but, you were fairly certain that the researchers had got a copy of it.
Starting to see it on the market quite a bit or something.
Just start, literally sell it on the market and get it out there all over the place to provide somebody false positives that they can't consider which person was actually the originator of it.
Right.
That could be an interesting way to approach it.
Maybe we just gave out a really bad idea on the TechSNAP program.
The story of the Dukes, as it's currently known, begins with their very first malware that F-Secure called Pinch Duke, because this one pinches documents. The toolset consists of multiple loaders and an information-stealing Trojan. Importantly, the Pinch Duke Trojan samples that they got always contain a notable text string, which we believe is used by the campaign to identify the Duke group to distinguish between multiple attack campaigns that they are running in parallel.
Isn't that interesting? And that to me also suggests that they are under such a time-pressured deadline that they can sometimes lose track of the projects that they themselves are executing. So they have to leave a trademark behind so that way their own project members know that's their own guys. Because they're moving so fast they can't keep it straight is what that sounds like to me.
But also, back in the beginning when this type of thing was more about reputation than about, doing it for the government or something.
True.
It might be worth it to, in the future, be able to be like, that was actually me. Like, I've seen stuff where, somebody posts some code, whether it's, something they weren't supposed to or for some reason they're writing this code and they don't want anybody to know who it was that wrote the code.
Say, like somebody named Satoshi Nakamura.
Or something like that. So the copyright and author statement or whatever will have, the SHA-256 hash in it. And, nobody knows what that is, but someday in the future, they'll be able to say, here's the string that hashes to that, and that proves that I'm the guy that wrote it.
It's a living resume almost.
Well, in that case, it's more about, when it's safe for me to admit that it was me that wrote it. Or sometime in the future, I need to prove that it was me that wrote it.
Right. Yeah.
Even if I don't want to disclose my identity, I just need to be able to prove that that's actually mine so that somebody else can't take credit for it or whatever. But there's an interesting timeline. Starting in 2008, the malware was used in Chechnya to watch the rebellion there. 2009 was the first time it was ever used against Western governments. In 2013, the group quickly shifted their target to the Ukraine. But interestingly, around the same time, they also started targeting drug cartels in Russia. It was the first time that the group had ever worked against Russian-speaking people before. And it turns out it was because they were going after drug smugglers. On the 12th of February 2013, FireEye published a blog post alerting readers to a combination of 2 zero-day vulnerabilities in Adobe Reader, and that those were actively being exploited in the wild. 8 days after that, Kaspersky spotted the same exploit being used to spread an entirely different malware family than the one mentioned in the original report. So, when a 0 day is still effective, you use it for everything it's worth.
That's right. Well, you still can.
Yep. On the 23rd of October 2014, Leviathan Security Group published a blog post describing a malicious Tor exit node they had found. They noted that the node appeared to be maliciously modified any executable that went through it over HTTP that wasn't encrypted. Executing the modified application obtained this way would result in the victim being infected with malware. So if you're looking at the PDF, there's a diagram. But basically, as you're downloading this file insecurely through Tor, they would take the original exe and wrap it inside the virus. And then when you run it, it would extract and you would have the original thing you downloaded that you could use. And then the last bit would be the malware, and it would get run and do its thing. And then,
so Alan,
following that,
if my count is right, then it's not. I said 3 at the intro. It's actually 4. You have F-Secure, you have Kaspersky, you have Leviathan, and you have FireEye that have all been tracking this group.
And ICDS.
5. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
that's incredible. These guys have been leaving their mark because obviously they've got the attention of a lot of powerful different companies. I'm showing that diagram, by the way, that you mentioned in the video version if people are watching. Yep. But yeah, it's on, for those of you that want to go find it, it's like on page 13 of the PDF if you're listening. Down in the show notes. Because, of course, like everything, Alan linked it up in the show notes for you guys.
Yep.
All right, sir, continue on.
Yep. Sorry, I lost my place. Anyway, so then a couple weeks later, on November 14th, F-Secure published a blog post naming the malware Onion Duke, and because it was through Tor, right? And associating it with the Mini Duke and Cosmic Duke and other Duke toolsets that were known at the same time. Based on the presented evidence and analysis, F-Secure believes with a high level of confidence that the Duke toolsets are the product of a single, large, well-resourced organization that provides the Russian government with intelligence on foreign and security matters in exchange for support and protection. So yeah, again, it seems like these guys might have started up on themselves and just decided to sell their hull to the Russians rather than being like the Chinese ones, a military unit under orders from the government.
It's, a tidier arrangement because the government can't probably officially have something like that, and it's probably not too off of something that we probably do here in the U.S. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a version if we don't contract with certain groups to do certain high priority targets and terrorists or whatever you want to call them. Probably goes on quite a bit.
Lots of defense contractors would love to have contracts from the government to hack things.
A lot of and there are some companies they don't do hacking, so I think, but companies like FireEye who do a lot of very hand in hand close investigations and actually even
intelligence
and FireEye even holds a special indemnity that other companies do not. So we do have other similar arrangements, but this one sounds like it does sound pretty much like it's a private group it's just got a great client.
Any intelligence agency of any government anywhere, they'll be perfectly happy to pay you money in exchange for information, if it's information they want. So if you go and hack and steal it and then be like, well, I have these documents here. I'm not even going to mention how I got them, but you will pay me money for them, right? Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Token ring.
And then at some point it was like, we will provide you protection so that, other governments can't extradite you and lock you up or something.
Token ring reminds us of Hacking Team, the recent Hacking Team story.
Yep. But yeah, I have both the Hammer Toss FireEye PDF and the F-Secure Dukes PDF linked in the show notes.
Very nice. So let's talk about IX Systems. Head over to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. That's where you go to land on the page to support the TechSNAP program and grab the guide to getting the ultimate server for open source technology. IX Systems has big rigs, little rigs, tiny rigs, huge monster rigs, and rigs that I am uber jelly of. This is such a cool story. IX Systems donates a one-use server to Pennsylvania High School for a redesign project that has a special connection to the show, doesn't it, Alan?
Yeah. So it turns out the two people that did this for their computer fair at their school board or whatever wrote to IX Systems to get a quote on what it would cost to get the server as part of the science fair project.
Yeah, because they probably heard about it. It's Andrew and Nathan, I believe, and they listened to TechSNAP and they heard about IX on the TechSNAP program. They thought that would make a great piece of hardware for our web server, and they were right. They were right.
Right. Well, but as part of the project, they were just looking to get a quote. They weren't they weren't actually planning to buy a server.
Oh, I love it.
It's just as part of the project, you have to say what it would have cost, and then IX is like, well. We like your whole project here, and if you write us some more about it, then we can probably make something happen. And so now, and they presented it to the school board, and they're going to build the school board's website. And IX sent them a nice server. Like that web server doesn't need 32 gigs of RAM.
Oh,
IX is just like, yeah, it's a standard server for us.
They say here, as we prepared for the August school board meeting, I started looking for a quote for server hardware. Being a fan of open source software, the first company I asked was IX Systems. They come highly recommended from Jupiter Broadcasting as a company that supports and contributes to open source projects, mainly FreeBSD. And I think look at this one-use server with 32 gigabytes of RAM. Man, the nice thing about going big on the RAM like that is a school district will use that machine for double the amount of time they should. And so getting a lot of RAM in there up front means it's going to have a lot of lifetime. And because IX has such great hardware, it's just going to run until they're done with it.
And basically it's an E3 process Xeon, and so they just as much RAM as it'll take.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Check it out, ixsystems.com/TechSNAP, and you can go read the blog if you want to see the post that I think Andrew wrote up.
Yep.
Very cool.
And it's going to be part of a series, I think, so we're expecting more blog posts as the project goes forward.
Yeah. Ivacon says that machine will probably be there for the rest of our lives. Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably very true. IX Systems has great hardware. Go check them out at ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Now, our next story is about a company that we're very fond of, and we talk about quite a bit here on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, and that would be our friends over at TarSnap, who I've been discussing an email confirmation bypass. Alan, am I correct?
Yeah. So TarSnap has a big bug bounty program. They've paid out more than 400 bounties, sometimes as small as $1 for fixing a typo in a comment. And actually, I was joking about it the other day when I gave my talk at VBSDCon last weekend. Somebody pointed out on Twitter a typo on one of my slides. And I was like, I remember watching one of Colin's talks at BSDCan. When someone pointed out a typo on a slide, he paid them $1.
Right there
yeah, right in the middle of his talk.
You love it.
Well, the talk was actually about how to run a bug bounty program, so it made a lot of sense.
It's a good thing he brought some singles then.
Well, being in Canada, that'd be coin, but yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, what do you call those?
Loony.
Yeah, I thought so. I love it. Okay, continue.
And we have a toonie that's two.
Yeah, you guys are so adorable.
Anyway. Colin runs TarSnap, which is this very secure remote backup system. And he posted a blog entry about a flaw in the sign-up system that has recently been fixed. And, being an open source type of person, he was very interested to tell the story of how it works so that people might not make the same mistake themselves.
Fascinating.
So, provide some interesting insight on how easy it is to make a small mistake and when building an application and how it can actually have real-world repercussions. And specifically, because TarSnap has a bug bounty program, he gets a lot of fake signups, right? As people do like fuzz tests against the form and do stuff to try to break it to get money, right?
Yeah, geez.
So for that and other reasons, it has an email verification. So basically, you sign up, and it doesn't create your account. It sends you an email, and only once you confirm it does it actually create an entry in the database. This way, his database doesn't get full of these fake accounts.
Clever. Makes sense.
So then he says, so I wasn't concerned when I received an email last week telling me that someone had tried to create an account as admin at tarsnap.com. 5 minutes later, I was very concerned upon receiving an email telling me that the registration for admin@tarsnap.com had been confirmed and the account had been created.
Oh, good thing he was watching.
Well, he got sent the emails because admin@tarsnap.com is his email address.
That wouldn't help me at all. I'm just saying that wouldn't.
Right? Yes, you get too much email. So he's like, this should not have happened. So I immediately started writing down a list of possibilities. Was it a forged email? No. The header showed that it was actually delivered from the CGI scripts on my web servers and went through my Qmail and everything. Was a copy of the, when he looked in his own inbox, there was the email. I should have never gotten past the mail server. Being misdelivered somehow? Nope. The mail logs showed the mail was actually generated locally, and so it was all fine. Was one of the CGI scripts on the TarSnap server compromised? There was nothing in the logs to suggest that. There might have been an exploit or a bug or something, or anything that suggests someone had been probing for bugs. So if the CGI script was being exploited, it was done completely blind. Nevertheless, I disabled the CGI script just in case.
That would be my first thought. It's always CGI scripts.
Not in this case.
No, I know.
Maybe kind of, actually.
Oh,
had someone managed to compromise the web server or mail server? He goes on about how he checked for that, but it seemed unlikely. The mystery was solved a few minutes later when an email arrived from Alamaran Venkataraman, the person who had done it. He hadn't compromised any servers or exploited any bugs in my C code. Rather, he had found a dumb mistake in TarSnap's account creation process. For most people, to create a TarSnap account, only a few things are required. An email address, a password, and a checkbox confirming that you agree to TarSnap's legal boilerplate. You submit those to the TarSnap server. It generates a registration cookie. It sends the cookie to you as part of a URL in the confirmation email.
Okay.
And then you click through that link and re-enter your password in your account, and it gets created. So far, so good. But some people need a bit more than that. Because TarSnap is a Canadian company, and as such is required to remit sales tax for Canadian residents, and because TarSnap is required to issue an invoice to its Canadian residents, invoices which have to show the customer's physical mailing address. So if the registrant identifies themselves as being a Canadian resident, then they have to be taken to a second page and type in their name and email address or physical mailing address. But it says, but what about that confirmation email? Well, I don't want someone who identifies as a Canadian resident to create an account without providing the legally mandated information, so I couldn't send out the email until they had submitted the second page. On the other hand, they had provided their email address and password once already. I didn't want to ask them to type it in again.
Yeah.
And so when I finally got all the paperwork sorted and started accepting Canadian customers in July of 2012, I took the option which was simple, obvious, and completely wrong. I passed the registration cookie as a hidden variable in the second page form to be echoed back to the server. So when you submit the form, it either sends you the cookie or sends you to the Canadian page. And it would just basically, a hidden field on that page would submit it again as part of the second form submit. This, of course, is what Elmaren had found. To be clear, the registration cookie doesn't reveal any server internals. The only thing it can be used for is to confirm an email address. But because it was being sent in the HTML response, anyone can confirm any email address simply by claiming to be a Canadian resident, viewing the page source, and copying the cookie.
So it's a little nuanced, but that makes sense.
It's like, yeah, I've done the same thing before.
Oh, and it's funny that you have to specifically be a Canadian resident to trigger it. So it's
to cause this two-step. Well, it's because his program was all designed and nice, and then eventually he figured out, oh, for Canadians, I have to do all this extra stuff.
Yeah,
there was actually for years he just refused to accept Canadian customers, even though he's Canadian.
Yes,
because he wasn't worth the extra paperwork.
I mean, you know what's funny is people watch this show and they think I Canadian bash. I'm not Canadian bash. It's just I think think Colin's a very funny guy. I think that's it's very simple.
He lives in Canada and he'd love to get a bunch of local businesses and stuff using his stuff, but he's like, yeah, tax paperwork is a lot of pain. I'm just gonna not for a while.
It's a simple
and
approach.
Eventually he did. So he says, oops. The fix was pretty easy. Use two cookies, one for email confirmation and one for the Canadian address obtaining continuation. More importantly, I moved the cookie generation to where it belongs, within the routine which generates and sends the confirmation email, right? Rather than happening before and being submitted as part of it or something. The actual cookie generation only happens after you submit the Canadian address obtaining form. Within the routine, which generates and sends the confirmation emails. And I've added a comment to remind myself that the cookie must never be exposed via any channel other than an email destined for the address to be confirmed. That last part ultimately is the most important lesson of this. Comments matter. I don't know what I was thinking 3 years ago when I reused the cookie, but unless my memory was much better than it is now, I almost certainly wasn't thinking about my original design from 4 years prior to that.
That's so true.
While it was hardly a fatal bug, and while I'll never know for certain, I doubt anyone exploited the email confirmation bypass. And the impact would not be severe even if someone did. But it's a reminder of the importance of writing useful comments. I often see solo developers excuse a lack of comments in their code on the basis that they understand their code and nobody else will be touching it. This misses an essential point. I am not the same person I was 3 years ago, nor do I understand everything I understood 3 years ago. Okay? People make mistakes. People edit code without fully understanding how or why it works.
Yep. I've opened up stuff and been amazed that I was the person that made changes last. Like, I have no idea how the syntax works.
I remember, when we interview developers on BSD Now, so I think it was Paul Hennekamp. It was like, he was looking at some code and he was like, who wrote this crap? And he does SVN blame on it, and it's like, oh, it was me.
That's got to sting.
So Colin's advice is to leave breadcrumbs behind, even if you don't intend for anyone to follow you. When you try to retrace your steps, you might get lost without them.
Yeah, leave a map even for yourself.
Good lessons.
Very good. All right, Alan, and that is, of course, in the show notes. Let me take a moment and tell you about DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own server up in the cloud. And you can get started in less than 55 seconds, and pricing plans start only $5 a month. And for $5 a month, you get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, because they're all SSD, one CPU, what's up, and a terabyte of transfer. Seriously, a terabyte of transfer for $5 a month. Did you hear me say it was $5 a month? Guess what? It's going to be free for 2 months if you use the promo code SNAPOcean. SNAPOcean, one word, lowercase that bad boy, and it gives you 2 months free. Now, this is nice because DigitalOcean is something I think you're going to want to try out. It'll probably blow your mind organ open a little bit. And they have data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, and Germany. Just go try setting up a rig. They have free BSD and a bunch of great Linuxes, and just deploy a system and try moving something over that's been an inconvenience to you. Maybe you want to roll your own Instapaper or Pocket Wallabag. Try that. Maybe you want to do OwnCloud for a little bit. Go deploy that. There's a lot of different options you could try with OwnCloud too. You could do calendaring. You could move a lot of things off of your own data. Or maybe you want to mess around with SyncThing. Implement your own Dropbox system for $5 a month. Maybe you want to run a Minecraft server. You should just check it out. They have one-click application deployments too, so you could mess around with some open source projects you've only even read about or just never even tried, like Ghost, which is really a great blogging platform that uses Markdown on the back end, which I am really, really tempted to try out for like a travel blog or something. And it makes it so simple with DigitalOcean's interface to manage all of it. Their control panel is super intuitive, and you can replicate that control panel on a larger scale with DigitalOcean's straightforward API. And check out their community section as well. They have a bunch of really good resources over here. How to create a Puppet module to automate WordPress installation on Ubuntu 14.04. Not bad. Not bad. That's great. How to troubleshoot common HTTP error codes. Now that's just handy. That's just handy for anybody. DigitalOcean has so many great resources. They hired professional editors. They pay people for their contributions. You can find out more at DigitalOcean's community page. Just do me a favor and remember that promo code.
I have a question too.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe they're working on a Canadian data center or something.
Oh, yeah?
I got an email recently that they're going to have to start charging me Canadian sales tax. That only applies if they have some kind of business entity in Canada.
Perhaps the rumor starts here. We'll find out maybe soon. I'll be adding Canada to that list. That would be great. You can check them out at DigitalOcean.com. Use that promo code SNAPOcean so we get credit and you get a $10 credit. So you can try out that $5 rig 2 months for free at DigitalOcean.com. I have kind of like a whole bunch of ideas on how I could use. So in the trailer I'm staying in while I'm on this road trip. I am pretty much completely offline all the time, and so now I'm thinking how I could use a droplet to do a lot of things online for me, and then just pull it down when I have connection. So I might have some stories about that. Speaking of stories, episode 107 of BSD Now is out in their midst. What's this one all about, Alan?
Infiltrating Linux conferences.
Oh, jeez. You guys, with the Ubuntu kittens and now this. This is great.
This one's more about, how to properly engage Linux people and convince them to try BSD rather than, don't go to the conference and tell them we're all stupid for using Linux, because that doesn't work.
Right. Don't start.
You have to make them come to the realization themselves that they're being stupid by using Linux.
Okay, I see. So you're saying don't open with a full-on attack of the GPL. That's probably not a good way to start the conversation.
It's more, look at the shiny.
Yeah.
Come play with the shiny.
That does.
And then once
appeal.
you try it, you'll be like, oh, this is so much better.
Yeah, I do got to say the shiny does tend to appeal. You got me there, Alan. All right, so you can find that episode over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. We just mentioned it now because you can get that HD version goodness. You can start it right now, and by the time the TechSNAP program's done, you'll be probably finished with that download, so you don't have to go with another moment without Alan Jude in your face, because he's in that show too. So you can go find that over at jupiterbroadcasting.com and subscribe to the RSS feeds. Also, since we are pre-recording some of these episodes for travel, don't forget to check our calendar at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, because we always would love to have you live, but the live times are a little wonky for a couple of weeks. So just check that calendar so you can get all that stuff. All that, so you know what our shenanigans is, because we's crazy. Yep. All right, now with the news all done, it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP at jupiterbroadcasting.com, or pop in that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or starting a thread in our subreddit over at techsnap.reddit.com. Our first email comes in right now from, hold on.
Mark.
Thanks, Alan. He says, guys, I think the coverage of the Mac keychain issue in episode 231 was a little deceiving. Now, I don't know if deceiving would be the word I would use, but he fills in some gaps. He says, what's not said is first, the user must run the malware with administrative privileges, explicitly entering their admin username and password. The user must also have disabled the App Store code signing, which is enabled by default, although some users do turn it off. And finally, the user must enable GUI scripting for malware via a dialog. None of this is shown in the video. They show what happens afterwards. So that's...
Well, they specifically mentioned those things, and we pointed them out. A, it only worked if you'd already rooted it, which is the admin privileges, and that the GUI scripting is often turned on by a lot of other applications,
like
and anything with accessibility. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, well, it would be just as deceiving to say that the exploit's not a big deal because you have to do this, this, and this, when people regularly do those three things. One point
of order, he says OS X Mavericks now does control GUI scripting on a per application level, so apps cannot automatically GUI script without user permission at each app level. The one switch for all that I was referring to was in a previous versions of OS X.
Yeah, but a lot of people haven't upgraded because Mavericks is horrible.
Yeah, it is balls, isn't it?
The other thing is that really while per application scripting control might be useful, it shouldn't be possible to script security dialogues.
Yeah.
Which is what we discussed.
Andrew writes in, FreeBSD network troubles is the subject, and he says, hey guys, thanks for answering my last question. Here's another one for you. So I spun up a $5 a month droplet in the in New York, their region, their third data center in New York. I've installed OpenVPN by following the guide that they have on DigitalOcean. The problem is the network performance. Not just through the VPN, but also straight from the droplet itself. I get about 500 kbps download when running a speed test from the server. When connected to the server via OpenVPN, clients are getting nearly identical speeds from speedtest.net. I contacted DO, and they said the host is fine if the speeds were about 70 megs a second on another droplet on the same host. This leads me to believe that I screwed something up on accident. I'm really new to BSD, so I don't know where to even begin my troubleshooting. Routes, dmessage, logs, any advice for a BSD noob? I've attached a screenshot of me running the command on DO that they had me run. So, Alan, do you have any kind of instinct on
my
this?
First question is, how is he speed testing on the raw host?
So here, I'm pulling up the screenshot that he sent in, and it looks like he is using bench.sh. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what that's actually doing.
It looks. It's doing a download from CacheFly, and then it's benchmarking the transfer rate from CacheFly. This might be a tool that DigitalOcean wrote for him. I'm thinking.
I don't think so.
No?
Like the speeds don't. You should never pipe anything to SH. Well, that's separate. But,
okay. Don't make Alan angry. Don't pipe to SH. All right. Damn it. I was thinking.
But let's see what this script actually does. Okay, so it's doing a speed test from a bunch of different locations using wget, which is not necessarily the best way to do it, but
he should be getting better than what he is seeing, though.
Well, he should have got a lot more results than he claimed to get either. Like, looking at this script, it should hit a bunch of different places. Like, CacheFly is only the first place.
Maybe it just depends on when he takes the screenshot.
Yeah, because it's supposed to do CacheFly, Colo at, SoftLayer in Dallas, Linode in Tokyo, Rotterdam, the Netherlands from i3D, Linode in London, LeaseWeb in the UK, Singapore, Seattle, San Jose, etc. I think the problem in this case is CacheFly because my speed is being pretty terrible to their mirror as well.
Well, there's that. What's a good way to test this?
Yeah, like I was only getting 1.9 megabytes per second from CacheFly.
Like, could he spin up a droplet in a California region and do like IP perf? Like, what's the way to do this?
iPerf is good for that. Yeah. Well, this benchmark tool isn't bad. It's just you would want to get the results from more than one place, and I'm guessing because the downloads it's downloading are all 100 megs a piece. If your speed's really low, it makes it. You're like, why is this taking so long? Like having 30 plus seconds between each output is like, slightly painful. Yeah, I'm wondering why you're seeing such terrible speeds, because you normally shouldn't.
Did you want to mention? So there probably really couldn't be anything he's configured wrong software-wise, other than if it's some weird. I mean, I can't even imagine what he can configure to make it do that. I would say he should spin up another one and see what it. Use a promo code and spin up another one and see what it does.
Just remember to destroy it when you're done, so you're not paying for it. And but yeah, if you have two places, you can use iPerf, and that gives you much better results and basically gives you continuous results.
If you just wanted to
but I think some of these speed tests are just crap.
Yeah,
like downloading a file over HTTP is not necessarily the best speed test, especially since you don't know what they're doing at the other end. But these mirrors are supposed to be set up to advertise the speed of the places, so they're usually done quite well. But I'm getting poor performance here myself, and I know for a fact my download performance is actually really good. Okay, so the SoftLayer ones are good. I'm getting like 40, 50 megabytes a second.
There you go.
But some of the other ones are, LeaseWeb in Netherlands, I was only getting 6 megs a second.
So the other thing you could do if you just want to know the raw performance that droplet is capable of is you could spin up another private droplet in that same data center, and then you would be doing an inter data center transfer, and that would be your best case scenario, and that would be another way you could do iPerf. And private transfers
looking at this script,
also free.
It looks like the two worst performing ones are the first two, which like the Coloat one took more than 2 minutes, and so most people probably would have just given up. Whereas when I get the third result from SoftLayer, there I'm getting, like 25 megabytes a second.
And if he goes to jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks, he will see speed test CLI, which is a app pick I did a while ago that is the speed test website, but on the command line. So that's another thing you could try. And did you want to just tell
some of these, like the Japanese mirror, I'm getting better speed from than I did from CacheFly. Turns out CacheFly is just crap.
Did you want to mention to him why he shouldn't be piping things to SH from the web?
Right, because especially... Oh, it was HTTP. Oh, no. Where did the image go? I lost the image.
Oh, yeah, of course I'm not sending it to you.
No, it's okay. I have it here. Yeah, that was not downloaded over HTTPS. So anybody could intercept your connection and have the command that you're running be, rm minus rf slash star or whatever.
Yeah, that's really dangerous to take output from the web and then run it.
Yeah. You should definitely, you use curl to download it to a file, then you read the file, make sure it does what you think it does, and then run it manually.
Yeah. Now, if it's your file, maybe.
Testing like this, you shouldn't run it as root either.
Oh, is he doing that as root?
Yeah, he's running as root. You can tell because the shell prompt is a hashtag, but also you can see at the beginning of the shell prompt, it says root at.
I see.
He also sent his IP address, but we won't. I don't know if you're already showing that on the screen.
Who, me? No, of course not. No, I'm not showing that. No, I would not do that. Why would I be showing that on the screen?
I get much better performance from the later tests in this script. But overall, not great performance, honestly.
Curl to shell install blaster says, okay, there you go. Curl to shell. There you go. There are a lot of different tutorials online that start with bringing something right from the web into your shell. So you're not the first person to make that mistake. All right, let's talk about Lewis. He's got a ZFS question. It's not a proper feedback segment without a rockin' ZFS question. So, hey, Alan and Chris, I'm a big fan of JB and TechSNAP, and recently I was listening to BSC Now episode 95, where your guest was discussing how ZFS saved his you-know-what. I guess that's the point of using ZFS, smiley face. My question is regarding snapshots and a backup strategy. I have 10 plus VMs running and hosted on a Proxmox server. It's using Extended 4 on a server RAID. It's an M5016 RAID 1 device. And another server running ZFS, it's a FreeNAS, as its main storage. From the FreeNAS server, I created individual NFS exports assigned my different VMs. So each VM mounts its NFS share to store data and backups. By data and backups, I do not mean the actual KVM images, but the actual data generated within the VMs. Like the MySQL databases or OwnCloud files or Coppermine gallery files, However, Proxmox does use an NFS share on the FreeNAS server for VM backups and restores. Instead of using this strategy to back up data, would it be better to use ZFS snapshots instead of the FreeNAS server? My VMs are all configured the same to use our snapshot differential backups to keep the network traffic to a minimum and reduce backup time. What other better way could I use FreeNAS to support my Proxmox server? And is its VMs from a storage point a better way, or could I use FreeNAS to support my Prox server from a storage point of view? iSCSI, would that be a better way? Should I keep NFS? Should I do snapshots on the FreeNAS server or anything else like that? And then finally, I'd like to mention that the servers are all gigabit connected and that FreeNAS server is on the slow side because of older hardware. It's 2 Xeons, a quad-core CPU, 48 gigabytes of ECC DDR2 RAM, 8 NAS drives with 2 M1015 adapters, 4 drives per controller, and all 8 drives are in a RAID Z3 Z pool. So final question. If one M1015 dies, do I lose the entire pool? I'd lose 4 drives simultaneously, so I guess I'd probably be toasted. Thanks, guys, and sorry for the length of this feedback. Yeah, that was a bit of a long one. But
so I'm not entirely clear on how his setup is. Snapshots don't replace a backup, but generally you want to make your backup from a snapshot because the snapshot won't change, whereas the other ones obviously will, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're trying to back up the live system, it's changing while you're doing it, and that leads to a bad backup, whereas doing it from a snapshot, your entire backup is all from the same second. But yeah, you can. So you kind of want everything. Yeah. So snapshots are good, but you still
use
need
them in conjunction with your backup. Don't use them to replace your backup. Is essentially your answer.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too.
iSCSI can be better. It really depends. If you're doing NFS, you're basically writing these VDI files. Whereas if you're doing iSCSI, you'll have a physical volume, a virtual volume on ZFS. And so depending on how you're going to end up using them, it can be different. And iSCSI can be harder to configure, although it can be sometimes more performant and sometimes not. So it really depends. But
test and let us know. I've actually, with Proxmox specifically, pretty much always just stuck with NFS, and it's always worked.
Even VMware mostly uses NFS. You can do iSCSI, but it's a more complicated setup.
Yeah. Hey, if you wanted more Alan Jude in your ear...
Well, hold on. I got to answer the second question.
Oh, okay. Oh,
right.
Yeah,
so
right.
About the controller dying. So if you lose 4 drives at once because the controller died, your pool will be faulted. And so if you just stop there and fix the controller, then you'll be able to import the pool. So you'll be fine. So basically, when you lose all 4 drives at once, the pool will stop working. Then If you can get the drives back by replacing the dead controller, then your data will still be there.
Very nice. Very nice. So now what I was going to say is if you want more Alan Jr. in your ear, you should check out BSD Talk 256.
Yes. So this is the other BSD podcast, the original BSD podcast, and this episode 256. And it was an interview they did with me at VBSDCon last weekend.
There you go. Nice and sweet. And you can find it at bsdtalk.blogspot.com. And of course, Alan linked it in the show notes. And that's one of my first podcasts, even BSD Talk. Like I listened to it a really long time ago. It's a good show, and I'm glad to see it's still going. That's cool that you made it on there.
Originally, that was who I asked to do BSD Now with me, but didn't work out because he's teaches and is on some school board advisory committees and stuff. There's no day of the week that he can dedicate to it.
Time commitments, right?
Yeah. Well, it was just mostly, even if he had the time, it wouldn't ever be the same day of the week, and sometimes it wouldn't be a day of the week, and yeah, it was just not going to work. And luckily, when I asked Drew, she recommended Chris, and
that's worked out great.
Somehow, even with being the most productive developer I know and having 5 kids, he still has time.
Yeah, he is really
magic. Or something?
I don't know how he does it. That's crazy. 5 kids too. I want to mention jupiterbroadcasting.com/rover. I'm going to be on the road starting by the time you're watching this. And you can follow where I'm at in real time at jupiterbroadcasting.com/rover, including any shows that I post from the road that are specific to the road trip. And also in making a call for support because it is an extended expense. And we're also investing in extra editing while I'm on the road trip. So we could really use your support. I'm hoping to even get up to 600 patrons. We're at 554 as we record at patreon.com/today. The funds there we're using to pay for the support staff back here to do a little additional editing, and maybe by the time I'm on the road, I'll probably have a few disasters that have come up as well. It turns out, flying by the seat of your pants sometimes. Patreon.com/today to support the whole network, and to follow the journey, jupiterbroadcasting.com/rover to see where the JB rover is at. Now, with the TechSNAP feedback all done, it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't fit at the top of the show, but we still want to talk about them and give you some links to follow up on your own. And a lot of these links were populated by our distributed intelligence database over at techsnap.reddit.com. Something like that. And our first story is, it's the drama that continues to be the Ashley Madison hack. And this one is it's ridiculous. The former CTO of Ashley Madison is now suing a security researcher we all know for libel. What's going on here?
The former CTO of Ashley Madison, so he hasn't worked there for like 2 years, took umbrage with the Krebs' write-up of some of the emails. Specifically, Krebs insinuated that the CTO had hacked nerve.com, one of the competing sites, because in the emails he was talking about security vulnerabilities he found.
Mm-hmm.
So the former CTO says that I didn't actually hack it. I just found the problems and pointed them out to my boss. I didn't go in there and steal all their data. And, Krebs kind of said that in the way I read the article, that, it wasn't clear whether they actually stole the data or not. But
right.
In this case, this guy's seems to be worried about his reputation. It's like, well,
I think he's got other things to worry about.
It's like, it's not that I don't advertise the fact that I used to work for Ashley Madison on my resume. You could stop saying my name so much.
Wow.
Or something. But anyway, the Dark Matters blog over at Norse also has some more coverage about it. And they kind of make some interesting points about, Krebs' side of it.
When the hunter becomes the hunted.
That was a bit overblown, but specifically, man obtains information for a story. Man has reason to believe information is genuine and accurate. Man publishes the information, or uses that information to create a publication. Man gets sued. Which is...
yeah, pretty much.
Libel is a method of defamation expressed by print, writing, pictures, signs, effigies, or any communication embodied in physical form that is injurious to a person's reputation, exposes a person to public hatred, contempt, or ridicule, or injures a person in his or her business or profession. Which you can see how that actually might apply to, Krebs saying that you hacked something, but...
Yeah.
Depending on your, it's more that kind of would show off your skill set rather than say you're a bad person. But
Yeah, Dark Matters also points out that Motherboard wrote up stories about the CTO as well.
yeah,
So,
well, I think some of those go back to like 2012.
yeah. Yep. All right, Alan, you ready for the next story on the roundup? It's always a hot one when it comes right from the bug tracker database. VirtualBox has a security update. Oh, no.
Well, the big thing here is that while VirtualBox has a security update and there's new versions, Oracle refuses to disclose what the bug is.
Yeah, unspecified security issue, they say.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Oracle's not going to tell anybody what the problem was.
You don't need to know. You don't need to know.
Oracle no longer provides information on specific security vulnerabilities in VirtualBox.
They actually say that in here?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Look at that. Oracle.
And it apparently has something to do with bridge networking via Wi-Fi.
How can this be okay? What am I missing, Alan?
It's kind of the issue.
Is VirtualBox basically? I mean,
well, I'm guessing this applies to more than just VirtualBox. Oracle's kind of been doing this to all of their software. This kind of leads back to that whole Oracle blog post. We're just like, we're going to take our toys and go home. You guys can have updates, but you can't have any information.
Wow. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yeah. So, Beehive can't boot Windows soon enough.
Yeah, right.
Although I rarely virtualize Windows anymore, so I don't actually need Windows.
So there's this sinful knock, this malicious Cisco backdoor that was found in 79 more devices, 25 which are in the U.S. So they thought I guess they thought it was a smaller infection, and now Ars Technica is reporting that it's gone much wider. The discovery comes after a team of computer scientists provided the entire IB4 address space for infected devices. As Ars reported on Tuesday, the so-called sinful knock router implant is activated after receiving an unusual series of non-compliant network packets, followed by a hard-coded password. By sending only the out-of-sequence TCP packets, but not the password, to every internet address, and then monitoring the response, the researchers were able to detect which ones were infected by the backdoor. Security firm FireEye surprised the security world on Tuesday when it first reported the active outbreak of sinful knock. The implant is precisely the same size as legitimate Cisco router image and is loaded each time the router is restarted. It supports up to 100 modules that attackers can tailor to specific targets, and FireEye found it on 14 servers in India, Mexico, the Philippines, and Ukraine. The finding was significant because it showed the attack that has been long theorized but was in fact being actively used.
Yeah, and so this was finding 79 more devices. Now, first, when you hear about a Cisco router backdoor and they say 79 more devices, you're thinking 79 more models that are all affected, but this is actually just 79 individual routers.
Sounds very specific, doesn't it?
Yeah, the number of routers is not very high, but
the same exact size as the factory image.
Yeah, they do quite a few things to try to make this hide, and so I'm guessing the places that are infected with it are pretty.
Can you imagine how good the developers had to be to make this?
Well, you can always make it smaller and then pad it to be the right size, right?
Oh, it's true. It's true. All right.
But more importantly is because of what you have to do to get this, it seems like there's always the possibility that some other packet gets in the middle or something, and maybe you get a false negative.
Yeah.
This device says it's not vulnerable when it actually was, but one of the packets got lost or something or out of order.
Yeah, I agree. And Ack in the chat room reminds us that the NSA has a division called Tailored Operations, where they specifically tailor malware.
Tailored access operations.
AT&T offers $250,000 reward to find who the heck is ripping out California's fiber optic connections.
Yes, so we've talked before about a bunch of these fiber cuts that seem to be happening, and nobody's figured out what happened or who did it yet. And so AT&T has upped the reward to $250,000.
I just don't understand why anybody would ever want to cut fiber. What a cruel thing to do. Come on, people.
If I cut a fiber, I would be rerouting it to me.
Yeah.
Like I'd be cutting it and then pulling it to my.
Yeah, don't be animals. Don't be animals. All right, so the Dutch police have arrested the alleged Coin Vault ransomware authors. You remember Coin Vault, right?
Yeah. So one of the many ransomwares.
Basically Crypto Locker, yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they have enough proof and everything to actually send these guys away, and what impact that has on other malware.
It looks like 1,500 machines were affected by Coin Vault.
Well, is that 1,500 machines that were affected, or 1,500 people that paid the ransom?
Well, victims. So I think it's people who actually paid.
Right, because a bunch of people wouldn't have been identified as victims if they didn't bother.
Yeah. All right, so there was a bug in iOS and OS 10 that allows the writing of arbitrary files via AirDrop, which is Apple's sort of mesh file share thing.
Yeah, so if you have AirDrop turned on and I'm near you, I can just start overwriting random files on your phone or laptop.
Now they've, I guess, patched this basically, but I guess it's not fully patched, and it's not patching all versions of iOS either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So turn AirDrop off, except for when you're using it.
Yeah. And don't
because as we talked about the other week, you could also end up with dick pics.
Yeah, just don't set it to allow all. That seems really straightforward. Just
yeah, but you might allow me, and then I would still screw with your phone.
That's true. That's true. You probably would. That's just true. All right, I love this story. I'm glad you caught this one. I created a fake business, and then I bought it an amazing online reputation. This is Kashmir Hill, who I've interviewed before on Plan B, and she writes over at fusion.net, and she's really sharp, and I like her stuff a lot. So what grabbed your attention about this?
A couple things. One was obviously that, when she approached some of these people that were selling, so as we're selling reviews for $5 or whatever, as a reporter, they were like, no, we actually review the products. We get sent one and we write up the review. But when she approached them under a different profile as, someone looking to do it, it was, yeah, just give us money and we'll vote all your shit up.
Cool. Let's try it, Alan. We'll create the TechSNAP business, and we'll create ourselves an online security firm business reputation, and we'll get some big gigs. Cryptome has our next roundup story, just cryptome.org right there. And it looks like, what is this, Alan? An email right here. JYA and Cryptome passphrases are secure. Plain text discovered, not related to Cryptome with alter. What is this, Alan?
So Cryptome is like the original WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
Where people sent them documents, and you would send them PGP encrypted, so that nobody would be able to tell it was you that sent the documents. Mm-hmm. Well, their PGP keys have been compromised. And the problem with PGP is there's no forward secrecy or anything. So if I compromise Cryptome's PGP keys, I can decrypt every message they've ever been sent if I have a copy of the message. So it depends how they compromise the keys, whether they also got access to the original messages or whatever. But it means they could decrypt anything that was encrypted with those keys ever.
Jeez.
So it seems like we maybe need to come up with some kind of system for PGP. But in the end, the whole point is your PGP keys are not supposed to be able to be stolen, and they're supposed to be password protected and with a strong enough password that people can't brute force it. But now, in this case, we would hope for more detail in the end. But
this seems. Jeez. Okay, Alan, tell me about.
Oh, they say the Cryptome passphrases are secure, plain text discovered, not related to Cryptome, with alternate to. What? That's not even a whole sentence.
That's what I was trying to read it. It couldn't make sense of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep watching, I guess.
But they have just shy of 100,000 files compiled since 1996 with all the secret documents they've got.
Okay, tell me about this next roundup story. The Justice Department, in response to a Freedom of Information request by the New York Times, has released 3 batches of letters it sent to lawmakers on congressional oversight committees between 2011 and 2013, including a wide variety of topics, but enforcement of civil rights laws, leak investigations, antitrust matters, spending on conferences, and criminal prosecutions. What grabbed your attention about this story?
So this is a bunch of things like the leak investigations and the civil rights stuff talk a lot about Snowden-esque things before Snowden was a thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
They're talking about leak investigations when nobody knows that Snowden has happened yet, or sometimes before it had actually happened. So it's just interesting to see what their views on some of this stuff was before Snowden, comparing it to now.
Yeah.
Post-Snowden.
Interesting find, Alan. Mm. All right, Intel's got our next story in the roundup. Intel launches our automotive security board to tackle connected car security concerns.
Yes, so they've created the Automotive Security Review Board, which will review the security of cars and
the ASRB. So Intel wants to position themselves in the market as an expert in car security, essentially.
Yes. Well, they did buy McAfee, right?
Yeah, well, there you go. Woo, okay. All right, next story in the roundup. Broadband users need a minimum of 10 megabits. Yeah, maybe 100 megabits. That's according to a report that assesses broadband in 30 countries, and the data finds the UK is 8th out of 30. Not bad for the UK. I wonder where America falls.
Yeah, well, Well, if you believe Netflix, America can manage about 2 megabits, maybe 3.
Yeah.
But yes, there's obviously the big difference between the rated speed of your connection and what you actually get. But yeah, I would agree that you need at least 10 megabits to feel like you actually have broadband, or it's for YouTube videos not to buffer and so on. If everybody actually had 10 megabits, my job as a video streaming company would be so much easier.
No kidding, right?
Oh, we're trying to stream at 2 megabits and a bunch of people can't watch it. It's like, yeah, here's a transcoder.
Yeah. I know. Here's a lower bit rate. Hey, I like this one. This is just in your face.
Did we lose context of a story or something?
Maybe. Which one?
That was supposed to be related to a different story.
Oh, maybe things got moved around just because of the recording schedule. Don't know, Alan. I don't know.
Did we delete stuff from the roundup?
I don't know. Do you want to stop the show? Stop the show.
No. It's just
full analysis.
We had a story about a trip through Yahoo's.
Oh yes, I did see that one. I don't know. Check the next one.
Oh, did you moved it to the other?
Maybe, Alan.
Episode?
I do not know, Alan.
I think.
Do you want to do it right now, Alan?
No, I'm gonna stick it in here because it has to go before this one to make any sense.
Go ahead. I don't even remember moving it, but that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. So Yahoo story first.
Now see, I got it. Okay, you take it while I go refresh my doc now.
Okay. So, researchers over at rcesecurity.com have a profile of a journey through Yahoo's bug bounty program.
Bug program.
Yeah. So they found a flaw in the Yahoo Messenger software.
Okay.
Having to do with the way it processes the emoticons or emojis or whatever you want to call them.
Okay.
And so basically they could swap out the XML file or put an XML file in a certain location, and then it would cause the client to do stuff it wasn't
because of emoticons?
Yeah.
Love it. And
they explain how they would exploit it and so on. So they went through and checked the bug bounty program. And specifically, the bug bounty program has a scope. It says, the scope of this program is limited to technical vulnerabilities on Yahoo-owned applications. For password and account access issues, please work with our customer care team. The domain and properties below are in scope for the program. Anything at yahoo.com or flickr.com, all Yahoo and Flickr branded mobile apps, and all Yahoo and Flickr branded client-side applications. You can submit vulnerabilities to other Yahoo branded sites not listed above, and we will find another way to recognize your effort. Specifically, if you read more of the details, it says, non-web applications are generally not in scope, the only exception being Yahoo Messenger toolbar and email clients. So those specifically are in scope. But when they submitted the vulnerability, they were told, the bug only affects a compromised host and generally lowers security. And so they said it's not that big of a deal. And they went back and forth on it. And eventually they're like, once the report was triaged, the Messenger team was assessing the issue. And they say the Messenger app is end of life, so resources are low, and they're not going to give you a bug bounty on it. And then suddenly the bug bounty terms page says that specifically the Yahoo thing or the Messenger client is no longer in scope. So it was an EOL until he submitted the report and so on.
Then they decided, it's not worth it.
Yeah. Well, it's an old program, so we're not going to fix it. So, we meant to remove it from the scope, but we just didn't.
And then, following that.
The worst part was that, yes, he's like, fine, I'll just disclose it publicly. And they're like, well, bugs disclosed publicly without permission can result in your removal from our bug bounty program, and you won't be able to participate in the future.
So, but he wasn't going to get a reward anyways.
Yeah. Not for this one.
Yeah, I guess.
He could, the next one could actually get paid.
Yeah, and I guess that leads to this tweet. Dear everyone, bug bounties are privilege, not a right. If you take the money, you agree to play nice. That's why they're paying you. There you go. Says the Grook. All right, Alan. Now, I believe our next story in the roundup is something to just sort of unwind for the evening. Cards Against IT. Like a take on Cards Against Humanity.
Well, I think it's actually an expansion set for one of the, you still play probably with the original cards as well.
Nice.
But yeah, so they got a bunch of white cards with stuff like, RM minus RF /* and PEBCAC and rotating the backup tapes.
A USB stick found in the parking lot.
A faulty crossover cable.
Crypto locker. Edward Snowden.
A KVM with a broken M.
Two-factor off.
A one-button mouse.
I love this. The server is down.
0118999.
And then they have
81999.
Here's a black card. The new IT director has a sick tattoo of blank. The last
500 free AOL CDs.
The last consultant was fired over blank.
A flaky VPN connection.
Two-factor auth with blank and blank.
Pinging 127.0.0.1 and viewing web filter block logs.
Blank is now included for free with every OS update.
Script kiddies.
A help desk call to fix blank with blank.
To fix Clippy with an RJ45 crimping tool.
I just got a new certification in blank.
TechSNAP.
All right, so I guess you'd have to print all these out and cut them up, but it seems like it might be worth it.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody will make a set you could just buy on Amazon on some nice cardstock or something.
An Arduino running NetBSD.
A faulty crossover cable. Yeah, or just
A rainbow pack of 3.5-inch floppy disks.
Hey, that's a keeper right there. That's a keeper. If you have an excellent roundup submission, techsnap.reddit.com, or maybe a story or a question for our community, that's a great place to submit it. Your questions, go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose TechSNAP from the drop-down. We need them for a future episode, so please send them in. And track our live shows over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, where you stream them over at jblive.tv. Okay, Mr. Jude, I think we're all done. Is there anything else we need to cover today?
Nope.
All right. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you right back here next week.